Good evening. My name is Heather Matthews. I'm SigEp's Chief Communications Officer. Welcome to everyone who is joining us tonight. It's great to have such a great crew. As we do this these stakeholder calls for our chapter presidents, our donors, our volunteers, our dedicated brothers each spring and each fall, as well as a budget call in the summer. And it's a great opportunity to share with you our progress on how we're moving along to our strategic plan initiatives. So a couple of housekeeping items. We are going to present a lot of updates. Brian has a lot to share with you. And then we'll do a Q&A at the end. As he gets started, I'm going to work on fixing that chat. But any questions that you do have, please put them in the Q&A box. The Q&A box is absolutely enabled. People are already using it. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box and we will get to those and we'll work on getting that chat fixed as well. So Brian, I'm going to let you take it away.
Great. Thank you, Heather. I was wondering why no one was responding to my chat. All right. As Heather mentioned, thank you for joining us, everyone. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of exciting and important things to share with you this evening. And I do want to also start off by saying that these things clearly would not be possible without the folks who are on this call. So as we walk through the recent performance and the plans for the future tonight, I hope that you personally feel an immense sense of pride for the things that you've helped SigEp do for the young men across this country. And we'll talk a little bit about just how important it is to do the things that we're doing today as we get into the session tonight. After we talk about performance this academic year and what we're doing to add more value to members in future years, we'll conclude, as Heather mentioned, with a Q&A until our time has expired for the evening. She also alluded to something that we've tried to be better at, and that's a transparency effort. So I want to make sure that the following dates are on your calendar. These are the primary opportunities for us to share what's going on in SigEp and to talk with you about where we see potential for us to be a better organization and to better support our undergraduate brothers. So stakeholder calls, this is one of them. These will occur 2 times per year, the second Wednesday of April and the second Wednesday of October, which is this session. This is our opportunity to talk big picture, share updates from the last 6 months, talk about progress toward our strategic plan objectives, and then have a Q&A. Excuse me. We invite all of our volunteers and our donors to be a part of these calls. And we've been doing this for about 2 years now. We added this past year a budget call. So last July, we held our first budget calls. This is the second Wednesday of July. And this is an opportunity for us to share details of our budget for the fiscal year, how we're allocating resources to have the greatest impact possible on the upcoming academic year and our undergraduates. To share a little bit about how we concluded the previous fiscal year. It's still very early to be closing the books on the year, but we have a general understanding of how we did in the prior year. And so we're able to talk about how that influences what we're able to do in the future. But we'll also be able to share how those allocation decisions for the upcoming year may be different from prior years and why we chose to do that. We also have program impact reports. So these are sent via email following a program. These reports will share key statistics about the program, data and insights from the programs. And we've tried to get into this habit of, after each program, asking ourselves questions of what does the data tell us? Is the program working? Is it accomplishing the things that we've set out to do? How can we make it better? Should the program be expanded, and how could we finance that? We've reviewed the student feedback and assessment from RUC and Quest that were held this summer. And so we're going to try and get those reports out to everyone very soon. We also have added a volunteer survey. This is sent each summer annually to all volunteers. And this is an opportunity for our volunteers to share feedback on the quality of the service from the staff and from fraternity officials. So our district governors, our board. And it's an opportunity for you to help us identify what SigEp can do better to support you and our undergraduate brothers. We did the first one of these this past summer as well. And we followed up with a summary report to everyone. And that's really continued to influence our work in the way that we think about doing what we do. We also have board meeting updates, and we intend to continue to invite you to our national board meetings and to have live streamed components to those meetings. We've done this for the last 2 in-person board meetings, and our next one is scheduled for November 18th, the afternoon of November 18th, and you should expect to see more about that soon. Then, of course, after each meeting, once the minutes are approved, the minutes will be posted online as well, and we'll make sure that you get access to that site in our follow-ups. Lastly, committee updates. Committees have been reporting out to the board, but this is an area where we've heard from you that you want to know more about the progress of these committees and how their work may impact the fraternity. So the things like mental health, diversity, equity, inclusion, growth, volunteer engagement, how are these conversations progressing and what will that mean for SigEp? Our committee chairs are preparing now quarterly updates on their progress. And you can find those updates directly on the SigEp website. If you go search task forces and committees, you'll be able to find those committees, who chairs them, who's on those committees, the charge of those committees, and reports that those committees have submitted. So as we share updates and plans for the future tonight, we're going to organize our comments to align with the strategic plan. If you recall, the plan was intended to be rolled out in the spring of 2020. We actually shared this plan at our 2020 Carlson Leadership Academies, and then the pandemic delayed that rollout, the actual work that would go into the plan. This academic year is really the first year that our budget has been structured to support the objectives of the plan. The plan has 9 objectives organized into a framework that's based on Kurt Lewin's field theory to influence individual behavior and chapter performance. Of course, we've tried to simplify that theory and put it in SigEp terms. So of course, 9 objectives, it's a lot. So you'll clearly hear a focus tonight on some of the objectives that are perhaps more fundamental to the success of achieving all of the other objectives. You also, I hope, notice another philosophy that permeates this plan that we haven't discussed or presented often enough. And that's the acknowledgement that SigEp's national success is the aggregate of our chapter success. The initiatives being introduced through this plan are intended to have maximum reach and impact with a reasonable lift for the organization. So when you think about expense and the resources needed to execute the work, we need to make sure that we're acting responsibly, fiscally. And then historically, we've been good at national programs, but again, I think we need to do an even better job of supporting what happens at the chapter level, the campus level, that can reach every single one of our members. So with that said, I'll start getting into these strategic areas of the plan, and we'll start with growth. So coming out of a pandemic shutdown and returning to something routine and normalcy, new member recruitment and chapter growth has been a top priority for SigEp. We want to ensure that chapters are at a sustainable size, that they're able to return to or exceed pre-pandemic size, and over time that we're able to offer the SigEp experience to more young men on campus. We believe that what we do is necessary, it's impactful, it's relevant, it matters to young men today, and we want to make sure that as many young men as possible will benefit from the SigEp experience. SigEp chapters have registered 2,453 new members as of this afternoon. That puts us about 2.6% ahead of where we were at this point last academic year. So many of our SigEp chapters have blown by their fall recruitment goals and are still recruiting. They're still executing their year-round recruitment plans. There are 88 chapters that have matched or exceeded their recruitment performance from last year. There are roughly 50 chapters that are still below their fall 21 performance and are still recruiting. And we have 48 chapters who have yet to report new members for this fall. So we expect, obviously, these totals to increase. And we want them to continue to increase each year. During our last call in July, I mentioned a national decline in rush participation. And this fall, we're seeing that theme continue to play out across the country. On some campuses, we've seen just a shockingly low percentage of men come out for rush. This decline and the looming enrollment cliff just a few years out, the concerns that really little is changing in Greek life offices to bolster membership, those things underscore the importance of SigEp chapters getting comfortable with and really good at year-round recruiting. We are seeing clearly the impact that year-round recruitment can have. And on the screen are just a few examples. At the schools you see here on the screen, formal rush participation was at historic lows, but our chapters continued to identify and recruit exceptional men throughout the fall. They exceeded their goals and they blew away the campus competition because of their ability to continue to recruit and build relationships and bring men into the chapter throughout the school year so far. And I'm sure they will continue to do this work. This is likely going to be the theme next fall too. We just don't see any of these trends or anything happening to reverse these trends. And so we're going to be focused on helping more chapters get onto this list, helping them lessen their dependence on rush and more successful recruiting year-round. We're going to continue working with chapters and their volunteers to help the chapters excel in shaping and promoting their brand on campus as well, finding young men who are motivated to join for the right reasons, building relationships year-round and recruiting every single day, because that's what they're going to experience when they graduate and they start working. We expect sales and recruiting and business development to happen every day. And as you've heard on our past two calls, we're working with a marketing agency to pilot a recruitment-focused marketing campaign that can and will target high school and college students. The campaign will have a customizable chapter playbook and also resources in addition to the complementary national components that we'll be launching here. We'll be piloting this work this spring and summer, and also providing direct coaching to chapters on their recruitment marketing. As we do this work with current chapters, we are also working to improve our new chapter process and start more chapters each year. Our fall startups at Texas A&M and Boise State have recruited 36 and 31 men respectively so far, and we're working with a very impressive group of volunteers to prepare these new chapters to operate successfully and independently. We're returning to Jacksonville State in Western Michigan this spring, and we're currently planning to return to 6 campuses next academic year. We hope to be starting actually 6 chapters per year for the foreseeable future as we continue to assess where SigEp can be successful and as we continue to try to grow. Unfortunately, while most of our chapters are focused on growth and providing an incredible SigEp experience, we have had a chapter in the news recently for all the wrong reasons. And some of you on this session or this call may be very familiar with what I'm talking about. On Friday, so just a few days ago, our National Board of Directors took action to close our Florida Gamma chapter at the University of Miami after receiving information and a video in which the chapter is chanting a deeply disturbing and misogynist song and violating university and SigEp policies in the process. I hope that this goes without saying, but behavior like that cannot be tolerated, not in a fraternity, not in SigEp, not anywhere. SigEps are expected to treat others with dignity and model virtue. We don't tolerate misogyny, and there's no place in Sigma Phi Epsilon for actions that could be detrimental to member safety, like we saw in that video. This is a reminder of just how fragile chapter culture can be and how susceptible it is to negative influences. Florida Gamma was once a Buchanan Cup winning chapter. And for volunteers working with chapters today, I hope this incident will present an opportunity for you to sit down with chapter leaders to revisit what the chapter stands for and what it represents on campus, and to ask questions about, are we a force for good? Are we a place where students go to be better people? Are we a model for other organizations on our campus to emulate? Does brotherly love really exist in our chapter? Or do we have activities and traditions that conflict with our values? Do we do things that are harmful? Do we do things that may be harmful to others or disrespectful to others? How do we get those things to go away? Consistently operating at a high level and with a strong chapter culture is difficult. It requires diligence, intentionality, a lot of effort, and it requires volunteers. And so let's go to that part of our plan. Successful volunteer recruitment, education, and support is fundamental to our success in every area of this strategic plan: growth, DEI, leadership development, career preparedness, health and safety, SigEp learning communities, you name it in the strategic plan. And there's a critical reliance on volunteer involvement for us to be successful there. And that's why we're investing more time and resources in our volunteers than ever before. Since hiring Brian Tinslinger, our former district governor and longtime SigEp volunteer, earlier this year to be SigEp's new volunteer engagement and education director, we have really dug into and begun to make strides in recruiting and supporting our volunteers. In 2022, we conducted a 24-city listening tour, as well as a survey with hundreds of volunteers to gain actionable feedback from you on how to better support you. We've decreased the size of districts to be more manageable for a district governor to recruit, to train, and to recognize the volunteer in his district. We held this past summer a district governor leadership conference in Dallas to provide hands-on training to elevate the support that a DG can provide to AVCs and specific volunteers in his district. And we've tested a volunteer recruitment strategy that we can use to support AVCs in the recruitment of chapter volunteers. We've successfully piloted that strategy this fall at 4 chapters, Montana and Arkansas, and at our 2 new chapters at Texas A&M and Boise State. What did we do? I'm not sure this is going to be rocket science to anyone, but we've invited the AVC president, chapter counselor, and chapter president to examine the current volunteer structure, identify gaps, and identify mentoring needs that can be filled with new volunteers. We then executed a mass emailing or mailing strategy from the district governor to chapter alumni and alumni near that campus, providing a chapter update and asking for support. Undergraduate chapter presidents will include quotes and pleas for support in that message. An alumni with interest in filling a mentoring role can easily share their interest online, which then produces a healthy queue of volunteer leads for our district governor to follow up on and start engaging in conversations. The results have been great. Not surprisingly, when we ask for help and we offer a compelling reason to get involved, our alumni respond. At each chapter, our DGs have had more than a dozen alumni say that they want to volunteer. DGs are working now to meet with each of those potential volunteers and to start filling those mentor board slots. Not surprisingly, again, when we make this a manageable and scalable process for our district governor, we do a better job executing and adding value. We believe this process that we've created can be executed across the nation when a DG or an ADC is ready for this type of effort. DGs will run recruitment campaigns for 13 more chapters before the end of this calendar year that are lined up. We'll keep going in the spring for additional chapters and districts as they raise their hand. So if you and your AVC are interested in running this play, please reach out to Brian and we will find a way to get you in the queue and start getting more mentors involved. Beyond volunteer recruitment, we also have a dedicated committee of volunteers led by Wendell Rakowski, our volunteer development committee. And this committee is working hard on volunteer training and education. You'll see the first iteration of their work at Carlson's this winter, where all volunteers are invited to our 8 programs across the country. The committee has built a framework for volunteer education that will enable our mentors and AVC officers and AVC members, all chapter volunteers, to pursue stronger, active mentoring relationships with our undergraduates. Carlson is going to feature 8 volunteer sessions, role-based roundtables, and networking time. Our volunteers have been asking for training on this scale, I think, for a long time, and Wendell and his committee, they're delivering. So we hope you and your volunteer colleagues will join us at Carlson this upcoming year. We're also, to complement what we've just talked about, we're also revamping our volunteer recruitment pages and education resources on the SigEp website to have a clear, concise, and impactful training pathway for you when you need it. So before moving on, I do just want to underscore the importance of in our commitment to volunteer recruitment, education, and recognition. We're talking about doing some amazing things for undergraduates in the future, and we cannot do that stuff without more volunteers who are empowered to do that important work and who are recognized appropriately for the impact that they will have on SigEp and the young men they're mentoring. So thank you for what you do, and please let's get more of your alumni friends involved, and let's build this volunteer family that we have that's so important to what SigEp does. Heather, let's go to DEI. So several years ago, the National Board established a committee to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in SigEp, and I wanted to provide some key updates on their work. Starting at the staff level, which is important as the team interacts with nearly all of our undergraduates and our volunteers. We've researched and we've implemented inclusive hiring practices, from the way job descriptions are crafted to how we market our roles to the interviewing practice and beyond. This has allowed SigEp to hire an exceptional and talented group of regional directors this year, who are also the most diverse class in our history. Beyond the fraternity services staff, the diversity of the team that serves SigEp grows ever more representative of our country. We have also implemented staff training each of the last 2 years that's focused on intercultural development, which has helped especially our traveling staff better identify with the brothers and volunteers they meet with and work with on the road. Across our communications, we work to ensure the stories we're telling represent our diverse membership. From identities and backgrounds to careers and experiences, I hope in the last 2 years especially that you've seen us celebrate the breadth of SigEp's brotherhood, celebrate our members and their diverse lived experiences in a comprehensive and new and fresh way. We also implemented a communications calendar across our social media channels to celebrate cultural holidays and highlight brothers from diverse backgrounds. These were very important recommendations from the committee that we've acted on. In terms of assessment, last year we worked with Dyad Strategies, who implements our annual Brotherhood Survey, to rethink our demographic questions. This was an effort to better measure if our chapters are representative of their university communities. The Brotherhood Survey is done each fall with all undergraduates, and just to note, coincidentally, it launches tomorrow for this year. And in this year's survey, undergraduates will answer about 15 new questions related to their understanding and their want to understand the cultural backgrounds of their brothers. This is to deliver on a charge from the Grand Chapter at Conclave to begin to assess if our members are advancing their cultural competence through SigEp. Now, after addressing staffing, communication, and assessment objectives, the committee and staff are working on finalizing a philosophy statement that shares SigEp's goals and its commitment to this work, and can serve as a North Star for us for our future DEI efforts. As we do this, we are also conducting a review of our governing documents to ensure the language used is inclusive, and we're also auditing the Balanced Man program to consider activities that, as the undergraduates charged us to do at Conclave, advance cultural competency. To date, the DEI committee has held 2 focus groups with undergraduates on this topic, and I'm sure they're planning to do more. This is simply the start of our work to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like everything else that we do, we will always strive to be better, and our work is never really complete. So we look forward to seeing much more from this committee in the future, and we thank them for their service to SigEp. Heather, let's go to BMP. The Balanced Man program is the cornerstone of member development for SigEp. When it's done well, it positions the chapter to develop its brothers as leaders, as future professionals, and as healthy, balanced men. Our chapters that provide a great BMP are often the best chapters on their campus, and I'm sure that you see this. Unfortunately, we haven't seen much improvement in BMP adoption or proficiency the last few years. Perhaps some of that stagnation is because of the pandemic, but the lack of meaningful progress in these areas demand that we revisit our approach to BMP service and support. So this fall, we initiated work in 3 critical areas. You'll see those on the screen: recruiting and engaging more volunteers in the member development process, clarifying learning areas and making programming more fun and easier to execute, and eliminating administrative work of the BMP and hopefully automating that and making the app more intuitive. So making the program easier to execute. The most important thing we believe that we can do to advance the BMP is recruit and engage more volunteers in the member development process. The BMP app has helped tremendously with retaining knowledge and not rebuilding the wheel every year, but we continue to see that when implemented well, a chapter is engaging volunteers to plan and execute meaningful programming and not simply relying on 20-year-olds to own the development of other 20-year-olds. Volunteers are needed. They're needed for year-to-year consistency and for the quality implementation of developmental programming. And this need is only going to grow as we seek to really enhance the leadership and professional development opportunities in the BMP, as well as the sound mind and sound body programming that's offered. The staff and a group of passionate volunteers have launched an effort to define learning areas, so to create focus, such as leadership development, career preparedness, and physical and mental wellness, the competencies within each of those areas, and to also recommend fund programming to development in those competencies. It's important that we reach every single member. And I mentioned this at the start. It's important that we reach every single member and that what we do makes an impact at the chapter level. And that's what this effort is intended to do. So to take that concept to leadership development, in 2022, fiscal year 2022, so last academic year, this was our first year back to in-person programs. And it's clear that our members needed them. Emotionally, mentally, the relationships that come with fraternity. This winter, our Carlson Leadership Academy returned after not being able to host the 2021 program. The Ruck Leadership Institute returned for the first time since 2019, and we once again held the Tragos Quest to Greece. Now, if you think back to this past winter, COVID variants were still rampant and the nation was hit with repeated snowstorms. So getting to a Carlson was not without its challenges. While the reach of our Carlson Leadership Academies was not as high as we wanted to see them or want to see them long-term, we were able to impact 597 undergraduate officers with a revised curriculum that produced gains in nearly every measure of learning and satisfaction that we track over the previous format. We were also able to impact 77 volunteers with a recruitment-focused role. An impact report was sent to stakeholders toward the end of the last fiscal year, recapping the changes and the success of Carlson. Because of our fundraising success, and primarily because of last Founders Day of Giving, which was amazing, Carlson is being expanded to include dedicated tracks for all 8 executive officers, additional non-officer tracks, role-based and foundational volunteer training, recognition and celebration opportunities, and a donor experience. The cities and the dates for all 8 of our 2023 Carlson programs, which again will include both officer and volunteer leadership training, will be announced next week. So please be on the lookout for that. And we hope to see you at Carlson very soon. Now, throughout the pandemic, we tried a few things, some new things with officer training that we ultimately decided to sunset because based on participation and feedback from undergraduates, we felt resources were better allocated elsewhere. There's a lot of things that we want to do, and there's a limited number of resources that we have to do those things. The staff is still working to implement a year-round executive officer education and support model, which we believe is critical to chapter retention and success. And one thing we did retain from the pandemic is this concept of virtual training for rising leaders pursuing executive office later this fall. So things that we can do this fall pre-Carlson that add value to rising leaders or undergraduates who want to be an executive officer in this academic year. We have 533 rising leaders registered for Springboard. So this is a 3-part virtual series led by past and current student directors on the national board who have been in the shoes of a rising leader and successfully navigated through the challenges of being a chapter officer. 533 is a significant leap relative to where we were last year with this program and is pretty close to the number I just mentioned for the 2022 Carlson. And instead of hosting, I'm just going to switch gears to post-Carlson, instead of hosting the poorly attended post-Carlson virtual training, which was pretty much the only option available during COVID, that's what's being sunsetted. We are reallocating resources to volunteer recruitment and education. This approach is going to ensure that undergraduate mentoring and training is done in smaller, more intimate groups. It is personalized and in one-on-one situations. And in most cases that these interactions can take place in person and that the relationships of fraternity can blossom. The 2022 Ruck Leadership Institute saw nearly 550 applications. That's a number that we haven't seen in a long time. And 132 students were able to join us in Richmond for that landmark program. Quest applications were pretty steady with what we've seen historically with 165 applicants. Never ceases to amaze me the quality of the applicant that we have for the Quest. We were able to send 17 brothers and 6 mentors on this life-changing journey to Greece. And while these programs reach hundreds of our brothers each year, there is a lot of work to do to bring consistent and quality leadership development to the chapter level for every single one of our undergraduate brothers. Again, that's that theme of trying to reach as many of our undergraduate brothers at the campus level as possible to maximize our reach and our impact. As we mentioned with the BMP, we've organized a working group of staff and volunteers that have made good progress fleshing out concepts to enhance leadership development offered through the Balanced Man program. And we're looking to pilot that work next year. Heather, let's go to career development. So we had more than 1,000 undergraduates benefit from career coaching last academic year. That is less than 10% of our total membership, but it is a significant step forward for a program after its first full year. This has been a remarkable way for alumni who have been disengaged for years, who don't have the time or don't understand today's chapter operations to be more involved at the chapter level. We're involving these alumni in a way that fits their passion, their experience level, and their time availability. If you know someone who should be a career coach, who should be involved in SigEp, and this is a good fit, please share the link at the bottom of the screen. We need more coaches, and our undergraduates will benefit from having more coaches. What was first rolled out when we launched this program via Google form, the career coaching functionality, so communicating interest in the program as a coach or being coached as an undergraduate, sharing personal information, using that information at the staff level to match undergraduates and coaches, all of that is now in my SigEp. And this functionality will allow us to more efficiently manage the coaching experience and invest more time matching undergraduates with the best possible coach. So we've positioned SigEp to offer significantly more coaching sessions this academic year. Now we need to increase awareness among our undergraduates, get them into the program, and get more of our alumni into coaching. So please make sure that your undergraduates are familiar with this opportunity. Again, if you know an alumni brother who would be a great coach, please get them involved as well. Also in career coaching, the programs and events team was able to finalize a contract to host Life After College this year in Louisville in this upcoming fall term. This will be the first Life After College event since fall 2019. And it's an incredible program where students can hear directly from alumni brothers on the topics that you'll see on the screen. They're able to sit down with them for resume reviews, LinkedIn recommendations, interviewing tips, and more. We already have more than 100 brothers registered for this fall program. It's a come one, come all type of program for chapters, especially beneficial to those that are nearby and can send lots of brothers. So please encourage your brothers near Louisville to register and take advantage of this opportunity. To pull this thread of reaching more people, more undergraduates at the campus level, just like I mentioned regarding leadership development, there's a lot of work to do here to bring career preparedness programming to the chapter level. We're currently looking at ways to do that, again, using the BMP as the vehicle for reaching more of our undergraduates with this type of programming. So that said, Heather, let's go to let's go to health and safety. More coffee. There are two parts to this section. One is focused on student safety and the insurance implications. The other part that I want to focus on or bring attention to is the mental health crisis on college campuses. And I'll start with the first part. SigEp continued its streak of a 0% loss run last year. But what we're seeing this fall is a not so subtle reminder that we've lost a lot of important institutional memory in our chapters that helped us get to that 7-year streak of 0% loss run. No undergraduates in chapters today were around when we decided to adopt BMP legislation, all the reasons behind why we did that. They weren't responding to the terrible string of alcohol and hazing incidents that sparked a substance-free facility movement and reinvigorated our commitment to SigEp learning communities. They weren't a part of launching the Live Your Oath campaign to combat sexual assault on campus. And because of COVID, very few were even around to plan events or run a chapter in a typical environment. So a lot has been lost. And this fall has been a reminder that it's critical to have even the most basic conversations, the historical conversations with chapter leaders, to talk about these things that are so core to our desired culture. Our framework for student safety, so recruiting men who are motivated by the right things, engaging more volunteers, redefining the role of a chapter home, implementing the BNP, that 4-part framework has been an effective framework for us. Insurance providers in the fraternity market have told us that's a good blueprint. They position SigEp as a model for other fraternities. And it's clear in their eyes that we've attempted to address the underlying issues of risk instead of simply being good responders to crisis. We need to execute in these 4 areas and continue to offer the safest and the most valuable fraternity experience on college campuses. But there's a lot to relearn and some ground to make up. And the consequences of not doing that are potentially severe. We've been very fortunate to not have the insurance expenses that other fraternities are paying. We've been fortunate to carry the favor of insurance carriers and brokers. We've been fortunate to have the reputation that we have in higher education because of our track record. And when we don't have these things, our work becomes much more difficult. and likely feels less rewarding. Now, on the second issue of mental health, and it's likely that we've all been personally affected by this crisis in some way. Just the statistics in this they're remarkable in a shocking way. Over 1,350 college students die by suicide, and more than 24,000 attempt suicide per year. And what's particularly concerning for SigEp and those numbers is the fact that in 2020, men died by suicide at a rate that was almost 4 times that of women. According to the JED Foundation, 63% of college students say their emotional health is worse today than before the pandemic. 56% of students are significantly concerned with their ability to care for their own mental health. So knowing this and acknowledging that mental health issues negatively impact our ability to engage with others, negatively impact our ability to build relationships, to excel academically, and to reach our fullest potential, how do we ensure the mental health and wellness of our brothers? The work of our mental health committee to answer that question has been inspiring, and I look forward to sharing the committee's report in the future. Their recommendations are thorough and ambitious, and we're already hearing from donors who are wanting to invest in launching and sustaining this important work. It's critical, and the more you learn about this crisis on college campuses, the more important you'll feel it becomes. So Heather, on that, let's go to SigEp learning communities. And as many of you on the call know, in 2019, SigEp evolved our learning community program to be more inclusive of unhoused chapters and align the framework of the learning community concept with the Balanced Man program. We've continued to work with the SigEp learning community committees, volunteers, to review all chapter accreditation applications and ensure accredited chapters are truly representative of the program. Becoming a SigEp learning community is now a prerequisite for a Buchanan Cup. The group of volunteers has been extremely thoughtful. Our committee volunteers have been extremely thoughtful and invested in their work. After each application review, the committee has provided very specific feedback to chapters on how they can improve their SigEp learning community efforts. And they give that feedback regardless of whether or not the chapter is awarded accreditation. Currently, 72 chapters are accredited SigEp learning communities. The number grew by 12 in the last 12 months. And today, more than 1/3 of SigEp chapters are operating as a SigEp learning community. Significant effort was made last fiscal year with the committee's help to update SigEp learning community resources. So new video training modules for recruiting a faculty fellow were launched. Roles and responsibilities for the faculty fellow were more clearly defined. More programming for academic achievement was developed. We published steps to recruiting a faculty fellow and how to engage a faculty fellow on the website, and we continue to audit and refine those resources to be helpful to chapters and to volunteers and to university personnel who want to partner with SigEp to enhance the undergraduate experience. So if the chapter you work with isn't a SigEp learning community yet, we hope that you'll consider this path. New applications to become a SigEp learning community can be submitted to that email address on your screen now. And those applications must be submitted by January 27, 2023 for the chapter to be eligible for a Buchanan Cup at the 2023 conclave in San Antonio. Lastly, and there's not a whole lot more to add here, substance-free facility support. So much of advancing this area of the strategic plan is rooted in the work that we've already discussed. But something that we haven't mentioned thus far is the work that's being done by SigEp National Housing to enhance and expand the reach of its property management services and project consulting services. So we look forward to sharing those details with you in our spring call. Our SigEp National Housing staff and board has been extremely busy trying to develop those resources and think about how we can best support more of our chapters. In a rising rate environment, we've added some complexity to what they do. And so they're looking at ways to be helpful there as well. But we're reminded of just how important and influential an environment can be on the undergraduate experience. When we think about behavior, this is why environment became a part of our framework. And so there's certainly a lot to do here to ensure that the environment that we have is supportive to the health and safety and the academic achievement of our undergraduate brothers and the guests that we welcome into those homes. So that concludes the comments that I have for this evening. I want to thank you again for your leadership and your investment in SigEp. There are just some very exciting things that we're talking about doing. And I hope you feel the way that I do. I'm proud to be a SigEp. Heather, let's open it up for questions.
All right, so we'll start with questions from the top in the growth area. Brian, you mentioned the looming enrollment cliff. Chris Haid also says there seems to be a shrinking percentage of men enrolling in universities. What can you tell us about that?
I think we're seeing some concerning statistics for men in general. Fewer of them are coming to college. They're more likely to drop out when they come. I mentioned some mental health statistics, and I think all of that underscores the importance of us doing what we're doing. There's talk as we get into growth about how we get into high schools and actually start to shape perspective in high school to affect the transition from high school to college, not just to influence the reputation or brand and the perceptions of SigEp in their eyes, but as a part of the development that we do, the good work that we do, that we reach into high school and can help facilitate that transition to college, if that's the best thing for that young man. But the statistic is concerning. I think it's good to point that out.
Yeah, for sure. It's it has been record breaking each year, the percentage of men going down, and I think it's a 60-40 split now, with 60% of the undergraduate students being women and 40% being men across the board, with some of that even at some campuses it's even more pronounced. So and pardon me, as you said, it means marketing is a real strength that we have to grow our marketing muscles, especially in our chapters, to be able to reach new audiences who may have never heard of fraternities before, especially first generation students, as that population is growing. Other growth questions. Nicholas Allen asked, how can a chapter overcome university policy that limits first semester freshmen contact in regards to year-round recruitment?
Can you read that again, Heather? Sorry, I was caught up in Herb Philpott's comments online. Sorry.
You're good.
We'll come back.
Getting there next.
Right. Yeah.
So, Nick Allen asked if a chapter has a if a campus has a deferred recruitment policy, meaning you can't engage or offer first semester or first year men bids to join. How can we navigate that through campus partnership, or what have you seen be effective?
Well, maybe there's two ways to answer this question. One is getting second, third, fourth year students to join is not a bad idea. And I know quite a few people who join SigEp as a junior or a senior and remain involved as a volunteer. And I think oftentimes in our recruitment effort, we tend to focus on just the youngest people on campus. And that doesn't necessarily make that just because it's what we've done, it doesn't make that the best strategy. And we may have to expand the way that we think about recruitment moving forward, especially with some of the statistics that we've just talked about. What I would love to see on certain campuses, and I've had zero luck trying to get any campus to consider this is that if we're doing the right thing, give us the opportunity to provide that right thing to more people. And I believe when SigEp is done right, and I think the statistics or the data would suggest this, we can be very helpful in how we help orient a young person to college and help them find good habits, help them excel academically, help them find belonging. And we know that those things will help retain that student. And those things are extremely important for a university who has to report those students to receive public funding. So I think continuing to have that type of dialogue with the institution is helpful. One day we'll hopefully reach a point where all fraternities are not created or treated the same, because all fraternities don't approach the undergraduate experience the same way. And we will probably need to be diligent, relentless with that conversation.
I do think if you're on a campus like that, the information Brian talked about, the research Brian talked about persistence, about graduation, about belonging, about mental health, those are talking points, those are arguments, those are ways that we can influence the conversation. And I know our staff is happy to work with volunteers to help on that route. Herb did have questions following up around the Miami issue. And so really, he's asking for, I think the big picture here is, this seemed to come out of nowhere. Was there a history with Miami? And, what admissible information did the board see, or did the organization see, that helped them make the decision to close?
Yeah, I think first off, let me say that everyone is disgusted by this. And I'm not sure that stronger adjectives will make it okay. We took action to close this group within hours of learning of what was going on. And we heard from our, now you're saying skip me. No, I'm not. We heard from the Vice President for Student Affairs that this was the most decisive action that she's seen a fraternity take, and was impressed by that. I think I want to hesitate to in elaborating on some of the details of the information, but I think it's fair to say, and hopefully safe to say, that 40 seconds of video that's now in the media is not all there is to. I mean, we should all be very disgusted by what we saw, and equally disgusted by the impact that it has on the young people around the country that are trying to do SigEp right. It's, I mean, it's beyond terrible and beyond words. But I hope that everyone who is on this call, who volunteers, it does maybe appreciate how fast the board and the staff moved to condemn what was clearly wrong. We just will not tolerate this. And I hope everyone can be proud of us taking action quickly. I don't think other organizations would have done it as fast, been as decisive and clear cut in what's right and wrong.
Thank you, Brian. And thanks to the board as well. Mark Keister asked, the Brotherhood Survey, as you said, launches tomorrow, which helps us measure a lot. It helps us measure satisfaction in the experience, belonging, brotherhood and brotherly love. It helps us measure even recruitment practices and why people join. And it helps us measure demographics, as you talked about, and newly, cultural competence. we did add those 15 questions, and Mark Keister said, "Have any others been removed? That survey's pretty long." Mark, I'll take that one. We haven't removed questions. What we've done is streamline the way we ask them so that students can hopefully move through it expeditiously. But additionally, what we really try with that survey is, if we're going to get you in a survey and we're going to use your time, we're going to use your 20 minutes, and then we're not going to hit the full undergraduate population with additional surveys throughout the year. We may survey chapter presidents or chaplains related to their role, but we really do try to capture everything that we need in that 20 minutes. So we do try to milk it and get the most out of it. Chris Haid, moving into the volunteer piece, Chris Haid asked, or really just said, "Thanks for working on volunteer training as it's desperately needed. It won't help to recruit more volunteers unless we can effectively train them on their roles as mentors." And then he followed up on the SLC piece. So thanks, Chris. He followed up on the SLC piece and asked, "Where can people apply to become an SLC? Is that all within my SigEp now?"
Do you know if it's accessible when you log in under resources?
Yeah, so if you go to the main website on the SLC page and you click on the application, it'll take you directly to it, but it is embedded with my SigEp. And the great news is that if they apply to be a learning community, so much of that is already part of their butt cup application, which we've really tried to make that a streamlined process going from one to the other. Stephen Jurgen asked, "Do we know how well the Balanced Man Scholarship has performed this fall? Hearing anecdotally, some chapters may have had headwinds, maybe on the marketing front, but just wondering if you had any information on the BMS."
Yeah, I mean, there's, again, I think a couple of ways of answering this question. Back to this point of losing some institutional memory. There were some chapters that did not do it for a year and it's lost. Granted, there were some chapters that really leaned into it and got even better because they realized that was the way to recruit. And in a virtual space, that was the best way to do it. I think what we've also seen, and I don't want to complicate this, but the chapters that are doing it and doing it well recruit well. The chapters that are lazy with the execution and don't put in the work are having a difficult time with what I think we'd call the ROI. The work that we're doing, and maybe Heather, you can speak a little bit more to this, to promote. If we have problems, and I'll use Texas A&M as a great example relative to some of the other new chapter startups that we've done. Texas A&M has been phenomenal with sharing information. And we have more than 1,000 names in a potential new member list that we've had to work through on site. And so, I mean, we could be on that campus for a year going through those names. When we get the name from a university or the information from a university, we can be very successful executing a Balanced Man Scholarship. When we don't get that information, it is much more difficult to see the type of ROI that we want. And so we are continuing to do things at a national level with streamlining the application process, having a universal application, how we shoot that application out to local chapters to build its potential new member list and help support its program, what we do with national guidance counselors to promote the BMS locally on high schools around your campus or in feeder schools to your campus. There are things that we're trying to do where even if you can't get that information from your university, we can do some work to help give you warm leads and build your Balanced Man Scholarship queue. And then the national marketing effort is hopefully going to be helpful as well. So I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, I'm like excited. I'm jumping in. I'm really excited. I appreciate this question. I'm really excited about the marketing resources that in the next year we're going to be able to provide to our chapters. We'll be piloting this spring and already beginning at Carlson to coach chapters on how to look at marketing differently, specific to recruitment. Because even if you're not able to get a list from admissions, we can work with that chapter to say, okay, what high schools or what towns or what populations or what interests do men at your college come from? And we can start to target via social media and via digital media and really work to reach high school students, to reach parents, and to reach guidance counselors with the value proposition that SigEp offers, as well as your chapter's Balanced Man Scholarship application. And so we're going to take an active role in coaching chapter VPs of communication and VPs of recruitment to work together on that. And our director of digital media, Guillermo, many of you who knows because he works the halls at Conclave and Carlson, chatting up your officers, is going to be the person that's running point on that coaching, because he knows the platforms in and out. So we're really excited about that marketing effort that, yes, we will do from the national organization, but we will also have the customizable tools and really the strategy and coaching for your chapters. So we are definitely excited about that. Additional questions. Bryce Giesler asked an interesting one. Is there any consideration being given to the BMP track and how that relates to the ritual, like compressing or eliminating rites of passage or having a single ritual?
Yeah, so that's exactly what the ritual committee is wrestling with right now. They've made recommendations that are that have been shared and being reviewed by the board now, and there will be that will be a part of the live stream session at the board meeting. So I'm a little worried about the amount of time that we have there, because that's a 45 roughly minute slot. There's a lot to talk about there. So there's going to be a lot of conversation before and after the meeting, I'm sure. But that is what the ritual committee has presented in its report this quarter.
That's awesome. And is that part of the live broadcast that people can join, or will that be a wrap up that people should look out for in the minutes?
What may be a little bit of both, but there will be a part of the live stream portion.
All right. And as you guys remembered from the top of the call, our board meeting is coming up in November, and all volunteers and donors will get access to a 5-hour portion of that board meeting where all the committees report out. We will take your questions as well once the board discusses or has their discussion with the committee chairs, but it's a great opportunity for an inside look at all the committee's work, as well as in-depth things from our ritual committee, our diversity committee, and some of our volunteer committee, some of the committees that we've been talking about tonight. So we're going to send out this recording, and it will actually have already registration and information to register for that session in November. And Brian, do you have the date of that offhand? It's November.
Board meeting?
Yeah, the Friday.
November 18.
Okay, so mark your calendars. William Heydrich asked, or Sammy, I should say, Sammy asked, are we still raising funds for the RUC program? And is there any chance of expanding the reach, maybe having 2 sessions? As you said, 560 or so students wanted to come, and we had space for 130. How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a finance problem. I mean, there's a lot of things, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of things to fund, limited resources. And yes, we are still, to your question, we are still raising money for RUC. We will never stop raising money for RUC. So I think it is important that we increase that number. We've talked historically about wanting to see every single chapter represented each year at RUC, for every chapter to have a relationship with that program and to have those lessons instilled in the leaders of that chapter. And And by not having every chapter involved, I think we do ourselves a disservice. I hope it's something that we can get to, but it is purely a funding issue.
We'd be excited for you to give on Founders Day of Giving to help us expand the reach of our programs for sure. I mean, as you heard it,
Yeah.
it dramatically helps with Carlson. I think the example was clear there.
Yeah, it's a nice opportunity to plug Founders Day of Giving, and I think it's just important to do. I mean, and we say this sincerely. That program or that day allows us to do a lot. We raised 2/3 of our annual fund through Founders Day of Giving last year. That really gives us confidence to enter into contracts or to expand services in the upcoming budgeting process for the next year. With the things that we talked about tonight, with bringing leadership programming to the campus level, bringing more career preparedness programming to the campus level, or to career coaching, to launching mental health initiatives. Those things will need to be financed. And I kept saying during the call, I think we're talking about doing absolutely amazing things. We're talking about doing amazing things, making a profound impact on young men. And it's going to require us to have a great Founders Day of Giving to do the stuff that we're talking about doing.
That's November 1st and 2nd this year, and we're excited because the generosity is it's inspiring, and it really does help us meet those needs.
Yeah. Can we go to Ted Benkin's question that just popped up?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah. So Ted asked, we will suffer from the images of other fraternities, namely Pike. I don't know if I'd stop it there, but maybe I think I'd add others to that list. Has SigEp thought about moving more fraternities to our level? The short answer is yes. The difficult part of that is we're not getting a lot of traction. And so I think the way that I've looked at it, Ted, is we continue to invest time trying to get certain organizations to move. I think there was a couple of years where we invested a lot of time in the NIC. Chris Bittman and I went to board meetings, and Chris went by himself too, to board meetings of other fraternities, and shared with them why we did the BMP, why we're moving to substance-free facilities, why we're launching the SigEp Learning Community Program, and why we do some of the other things that we do. And it got zero traction. Even going to principal decision makers of the organization, we didn't get much traction. I mean, the people that we were able to really lock arms with were the same groups that we always are able to, and that's Beta and DU. And I hope that we can find a way. Maybe we just aren't doing the right thing. I hope we can find a way to move more organizations in the direction that we're going. But I think I've hit a point, at least personally, the way that I'm thinking about it is, in order to get more people to move, I've got to invest more time. And if I invest more time there, I'm not investing more time over here. And over here, we have leadership and career preparedness and mental health and student safety, and volunteers and DEI and the things that we're talking about that are critical to our future. I wish that we had the bandwidth or the resources to go on a national campaign and move these other groups. But before we do that, I'm not sure what would even move them. And so again, the best thing that I can come up with is we're going to have to outperform them to the point where they're embarrassed.
I think we just have one more question in our queue, and that's John Wagner asked a question. How do we measure success of the BMS, the Balanced Managed Scholarship? Is it the total number of applicants we get? Is it the number who join? How do we really look at what makes a successful BMS?
This is my bias, right? I think there's three parts to this answer. I think there's one, there is a pure recruitment play here. There's two, there's a campus reputation and chapter culture issue. And then there's a personal development component to it as well. And on that last part, the personal development component, I don't know that there's a lot of young men on campus who are doing interviews of other young men. And that is a really good experience. That's a good skill set to develop, to sit down with someone face to face and ask them questions that really dig below the superficial. I think that helps us be better communicators. That helps us be more comfortable in different scenarios. I think it helps us be better recruiters, period. And so back over to the recruitment play. When you run the scholarship and you're also not good at recruiting, that hurts. And I think it affects the way that you think about the other two areas. We have to, as we ask these questions, we have to weave into what we do the value of SigEp, the benefits, why SigEp matters to the person that we're talking to, that we're interviewing. Those things affect the second part, and that's the culture of our chapter and the reputation. When we're focused on running a scholarship program, promoting ourselves on campus as the fraternity of academic excellence that cares about balance in life, that is doing the right thing, running fraternity the right way, that's a long-term message that should ultimately affect our ability to recruit. But it certainly is appreciated by campus. It should be recognizable in the campus community if we're doing it the right way. And I think that's why I caveated a previous comment that I made. You've got to put in the elbow grease and do it the right way in order to get the ROI. And if you're doing all three of those things that I've mentioned, those three buckets, 50%, you're probably frustrated with the BMS. And I'm not saying that Ohio State is. I'm just saying that that's the way that I look at it, and the way that I think that there's value in the way to make the most of the program.
All right, as we wrap up for this evening, any parting thoughts, Brian, or anything that you would like to close with?
There's so much to talk about. I mean, and I'll always say thank you when we close. I also, now that I've got the chat open, I'm seeing that we've got a lot of committee members on the call. And so I suspect that there's been a lot of answering of questions that have come up. If I haven't done a thorough enough job in answering something, I'm sure a committee member has jumped in. But we've got phenomenal people on this call. SigEp doesn't happen without you. Thank you for your leadership. For so many of you that are advancing critical committee work, that's game-changing stuff. And let's keep going. I think we are on the verge of doing some really big, important, exciting things. And so the next time we get on a call like this in the spring, there's going to be more exciting things to talk about. And then I'll make one more plug for Founders Day of Giving. I hope that we see you on November 1 and that we can celebrate beating even last year's historic number and doing more good things for young people.
Thank you all for joining us. We have recorded tonight's session, and in the next week, we will send that recording to all of our volunteers and donors who are invited tonight, as well as post it on YouTube where it's available to any brother. So thank you so much for all that you do and for being with us here tonight. Have a great one.